I'm generally just talking about London and my journey to becoming a London mayoral candidate for the Conservative Party. And I don't get to present many awards, I have to say, and especially in such beautiful surroundings. But he wanted me to talk to you about my sort of journey to London and business and why business is politics. And part of the reason for that, I suppose, is that I'm an unusual mayoral candidate in so much as I have no background in politics per se. I've been involved in the Conservative Party for a long time, but I've had no elected office. And I've chosen to make my life or my political statements through the businesses that I've owned or through the way I live my life. And at the end of the day, that's PR, that's public relations, and that's my link. Clever, eh? So I came to London from Sussex, and London's amazing. I think one of the most amazing cities in the world. Partly because the day you arrive here, you're considered a Londoner, and if you choose to be a Londoner, it's sort of a state of mind, and that we can't take that for granted. It's not like that in other cities in the world. I'm fortunate enough to have a flat in Barcelona. And there you even have to speak Catalan to get a job there. If you live in Paris, you have to be from Paris. Not even France is good enough to be accepted as a Parisian, where you come to London and you're accepted immediately, which I think is great. Even if you don't speak English, it's all fine here. London's an amazing city in other ways, where we have like a turnover of £565 billion a year. And when you compare that to the kind of conversation we've been having after the recent referendum about Scottish oil that's worth about £6 billion a year, the export of cash to the rest of the country is huge. A third of all transactions are done in London. And interestingly, there are 8 million trees in London, making us the largest urban forest. But when I came, I know. But when I came to London, I had nothing. I was very much that kind of Dick Whittington fellow. I grew up in Care, and I literally just arrived here, moved to a squat in Kentish Town in the days when there were squats in Kentish Town, and it was the only place you didn't want to get off on the Northern Line, and I didn't really have anything going for me, but determination. And I decided to set up a business because I'd worked in an insurance company, a business that helped people who were in HIV high-risk groups, people who couldn't get insurance, like gay men or people who were intravenous drug users. And at the time, no one was helping these people at all. You couldn't get life insurance, you couldn't get pensions. And actually being out as a gay guy, and I'm a gay guy, being out in the city in those days was unheard of. There were only a few gay people out. It was like John Inman, Julian Clary and Boy George, and that's where it stopped. And so I came along and I decided to open this brokerage, and in doing so, inadvertently began a conversation or created what has now been known as the Pink Pound. At the time, there were no groups, no LGBT groups in Goldman Sachs or LGBT Tory. You know, LGBT Tory, or whatever it is called, is now the largest political gay and lesbian group in the country. It's bigger than all the other political groups put together. Well, that was unheard of. There were no out gays at the time in politics, and certainly hardly any in the city, or none that were in the newspapers were speaking about their life. And so I set this business up. And what shocked me really was that the business grew and grew, and it grew to be something like the 3rd largest company in its sector in the country. And the reason it did that was not just because we had lots of sort of gay customers buying lots of products from us. We didn't, in fact. We had a whole range of customers, many of whom weren't in that group whatsoever. But what they were was they kind of admired what we were doing. They liked us, they respected us, they were voting for us. And I started to realise that business is politics and the way you live your life. And being open was inspiring people. And we did it in other ways. Now you would call this a disruptor business, but there weren't such trendy terms in those days. We employed largely female consultants and senior managers, and and of course now this is commonplace or considered good practice, but at the time it just wasn't happening. And we wanted to egalitarianize the financial services industry in other ways. So we didn't have anyone wearing suits. They wore casual clothes. And now, of course, you go into any great organization, Google or whatever, it was almost, very, very few people wearing ties, even in this room. The whole culture's changed, but what we're trying to do was send out a new message of inclusion and egalitarianism in the financial services industry, which stuck. So it was our little way of changing the world. And since then, all my businesses have been disruptor businesses. Everything I've gone into have been in some ways set out to change the world, whether it's kids shampoo with no dangerous chemicals, or financial services for other groups like people with mental health mental health problems. They've always benefited from the public relations that come around through being kind of disruptor businesses and changing the world, and they've also gone some way to changing the world. And it really taught me the power of the individual and the power of public relations. Later on, I joined or became much more active in the Conservative Party, and I set about, my mission there was to try and bring that to the centre, much as I felt business had started and society had moved to the centre. The Conservative Party was considerably behind that arc. And I don't think there were any out gay Tory MPs. There was Matthew Parris, but he'd left, he wasn't gay when he was a Member of Parliament. Oh, he wasn't out when he was a Member of Parliament. You must remember that when I went into this, Elton John was still married. This is it's incredible to think of that now, to a woman, I mean. And so and as I got to the centre and tried to have a conversation with the Conservative Party about how it should move to the centre and why this was a good thing, I thought about sort of public relations tricks I could try. And I could say the kind of the best thing and the worst thing for me happened in the same day, which is that I was the official escort for Margaret Thatcher to the 1999 Blackpool conference. Why it was the best thing was, for me, she's always been an iconic figure and someone I admired because I'm a free markets sort of lad, and that's why I joined the Conservative Party. Otherwise, I have to say, it would have been a pretty tricky ordeal to have been a member of the Conservative Party in those days for someone like me. But it was the worst day because thousands of customers cancelled their policies, but it was worth it because it started a conversation with the Conservative Party that brought it to the centre. And I'm very proud to say that for my money, all three parties are now in a very comfortable place when it comes to all issues relating to human rights and equality. And I'm pleased to have played a small part in that journey. Now to London politics and where I stand at the moment. And in a moment, I'm going to answer the question why I think PR is important for London. But the conversation or the things that are most important to Londoners at the moment are basically housing. And I'm of course having to spend my entire time working out how you can please as many Londoners as possible while increasing the amount of housing stock. And there are other very traditional subjects like policing and cleaner air, making London clean. There are currently 4,000 premature deaths a year due to dirty air. Last time we brought in a Clean Air Act, there were 4,000 deaths a year. That was in about 1952. But in those days, you could see it. And these days you can't see it, and it doesn't seem to be such a pressing issue. But the PR issue that I have to deal with is that I spent the last year going around London, and I'm often asked, what's your big idea then? And I stand there, what are you going to do? And you're in some sort of party, and the reality is, I do have big ideas, but on the whole, it's loads and loads of little ideas. And as I've been to everything from children's hospices to the air ambulances to Meals on Wheels to homeless shelters, tube digs. I've literally maybe I've been to, as far as I can find, every single kind of London institution I can find, and they all have small goals and objectives. So one of my goals and objectives is to raise £1 billion a year for London's good causes, but it's to raise £1 billion a year for lots of little causes. And how I talk about that without being the man of little ideas is going to be, only you can probably tell me what a nightmare that could be in copy terms. What I'm hoping, there are a range of candidates, and some of you will notice that probably one of my biggest competitors to in the race to become mayor comes from a very different background to me. And I'm, of course, all about social mobility because social mobility is my story. I want anyone from any background to be able to make it. And so from a PR perspective, what I'm hoping to send, not about me, but what I want people to understand about London is that anyone can get on if they want to. And I'm hoping that my story will inspire people regardless of whether I go on to become the candidate. But why London needs to remain strong and why London needs to remain vital is the biggest question of all, and it's why London, and I think it's all about London's PR and where we stand in the world, on the world stage, because London is, in my opinion, as I travel to Beijing and I can't use the internet, or I see the human rights abuses, even in places like Moscow, or the fact you can't drive in Saudi Arabia if you're a woman, or you'll get executed for your sexuality in certain places in Africa. London being this kind of amazing centre where everyone comes to set their businesses, everyone wants to live here, has become a torchbearer for best practice, for democracy, for culture, but mostly for human rights. And for me, that's almost the most important thing. If we can continue to send out this message of what a city should be like, because I can tell you one thing, as you go to Beijing, I get no sense that we're going to become like Beijing one day. I only feel they're going to become like us. And the more we talk about it, the more chance that has of happening quickly. Anyway, I think probably it's time for Gerard to come back. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ivan. Ivan's very difficult to pin down. We had several discussions about what he was going to talk about, and none of what he's just said was what we but fascinating it is. But I will just say one thing. He has started that. He started a thing called, or he's a founder of the London City Incubator Scheme, and that's focusing on early stage growth startups in business, focusing on clean technology and digital media. So, I mean, he is very much in our sector. Thank you, Ivan.